Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Beluga series. I miss doing these long videos like this, so I set aside some time today so I could kind of like bulk record some longer content. But if there's anything specific that you want me to talk about, you can always comment on here or you can email me at exoticalsunited@gmail. But I want to tell the story about my time as a beluga and what it was like being a belugautical. I want to talk about what it was like being a fat zodical and just kind of going into details because I feel like part of why people become fat is because they're understimulated. There's so much talk in our society about being overstimulated, like having ADHD, there's too much stuff going on. But what about the people that are understimulated? Because that's what happened to me. I was a boring ass bitch and I had a boring life at the time. So, number one reason why I was understimulated, being in a dusty relationship where I don't go anywhere and I don't do anything. What is the point of losing all this weight? What's the point of having a six pack? What is the point of all this shit if I'm not going to go anywhere? Like, that was part of my mindset back then. And I also feel like I went through a lot of brainwashing as well because I had good girl syndrome. This is back when I still had good girl syndrome. So people would always say things like, oh, looks don't matter. The outside doesn't matter. And especially because I was already in a relationship, I felt this sense of, oh, this is already good enough. I already have someone. So that was more when I was male centered at the time. So it's this idea that because I already have this guy that, we love each other, everything's going to be fine. So I don't have to have the six pack. I don't have to have a perfect body. He already accepted me with me not having a perfect body, even though that's technically false. Like, I was definitely smaller when we first got together, and then I feel like I gradually went up. But at the time, part of my beluga behaviors, it came from not having anything to do, not having anywhere to go. So at the time, I had just moved to my dream city. So I told you guys I've had several dream cities throughout my life. Thankfully, I've been able to live in all of them. Um, but this is before I moved to this city. This city was not my dream city yet. This is when the other city was still my dream city. So I was just proud of myself for the fact that I got out of my hometown. If you're from a small town, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where when you get out of that hometown, especially if you move across the country, there's this feeling of you made it. There's this feeling of you broke free, you're kind of spreading your wings and flying. So that's how I felt at the time. So it was this mindset of I'm good enough. What I have is good enough. My body is good enough. Where I'm at in life is good enough. So I understand why people say that is because they don't want you to have an inferiority complex. But at the same time, I felt this sense of being sedated. I felt emotionally sedated. I felt this sense of being asleep, for lack of better words, kind of like complacent. It's kind of like, okay, I'm satisfied with my life. I'm already doing better than all the people from my hometown. And this was also during the time where I had deleted all of my social media. So I talked about this in the Patreon, how I take breaks from social media. By the way, you should still do that. I still do that all the time. I will take frequent breaks from social media. So at this time, everything was gone. You basically didn't even know if I existed or not. I was kind of like a ghost, and I liked that because that was my way of taking back control over my privacy. So what had happened before was I had so much trauma from being hyper visible. So I had the trauma from Mean Girls, like the mean Christian girl drama. There was like always a basic Betty at my job talking shit. There was always somebody kind of like hating on me or being jealous of me and stuff. And that is when I was very skinny. So for context, if you are an exotical, you're thin, you have a nice body, you have long, healthy, natural hair, you have a pretty face and everything, that's going to ignite jealousy. So that was my experience for pretty much my whole life. So it was actually refreshing for once to not have anyone know where I live. I literally just moved away. I didn't tell anybody, by the way. I just disappeared. I, I just disappeared from the entire city. I ghosted the entire city. I ghosted everything I had ever known before. So, I mean, obviously, the people really close to me knew that I was like moving away, but I feel like that was a very good reset. But I just think that because my nervous system was so used to always having a safety net. So even though my environment it wasn't good for like growth, it still did provide a sense of safety. You know, living in your hometown, I got my mom, my dad, I got my brothers, my sisters are there. Everybody was still there. My extended family. So even though there was like drama and kind of like crabs in a bucket mentality in that city, I still felt this emotional safety net where I always had emotional support. I was the quote unquote privileged one in my hometown. I was kind of like this daddy's little girl, kind of this spoiled. That was more so my stereotype in my hometown. And so that's part of why I received people hating on me and stuff, besides just the other stuff of being skinny and all that. Um, but it felt refreshing to move away and for once to be independent. And this is outside of college. So, you know, of course, I had some sense of independence in college, but like not really because in college, you're still in the dorm, you still have to do homework and stuff. So when it came to this, I felt like this was a really big step for me stepping into adulthood because it's like, no, I'm not in college. There is no structure around my life. So it was my first time that I felt like a stronger sense of freedom because it's like, I don't have to do any homework. I'm not in school anymore. And none of my family lives here. I'm all the way across the country. Nobody knows what I'm doing. I could just be whoever I want. So I felt like that transition, it would have been too much for my nervous system at the time to do that much leveling up all at once. I didn't have a high capacity for leveling up at the time. And that's something I've learned as I got older. Different people have different capacities for change. So you know how some people they hate change? Some people they start to panic when things start changing. You know, they're not used to kind of turning their whole life upside down. So I felt like I was kind of like that, and I just felt like moving out of my hometown, moving so far away from my family and stuff, that was already enough of me turning my life upside down. So then trying to add weight loss on top of that, that would have been too much. I was not capable of that at the time. So I moved to this new city, and obviously I was excited because I made it to my dream city. I lived in this really cute apartment. So the apartments that I lived in, it was like one of those apartments where they have dozens of different buildings. It's like a giant apartment, and it's all in this gated area. So it looks like its own neighborhood, except it's just a whole bunch of apartments. I think they had like 15 to 20 buildings, and each building was like a certain level of floors. So I felt this sense of, I already made it. You know, this is already far enough. I've come so far already. And I feel like that's kind of the downside of being positive. You know, it's toxic positivity. I had a toxic positivity mindset. That's part of what made it okay for me to become a beluga because I was like, oh, I'm already good enough. I'm already pretty enough. My hair's already long enough. I already have the face card. I already have, you know, I already look how I want to look in general. So a little stomach and some extra thighs, that is not that big of a deal. I felt like that was more my mindset. And then because I wasn't being seen, because I was taking a break from visibility, that made it even more easy. It kind of took off the pressure, for lack of better words. I didn't feel as many eyes on me. And also at that time, I had more of an external locus of control. And so I was more of the person where I would thrive off of people being jealous or hating on me or whatever. I would channel that anger into leveling up. So, but that's still kind of like external. So when I no longer had that, when I was no longer around all these monitoring spirits and shit, it was basically like I could relax, except I relaxed a little bit too much. So I was like, oh, I don't even have to try, you know? So I kind of like, I don't know if I want to say neglected myself, but the way that I viewed it was I'm just resting. I'm finally resting. I'm no longer striving. I'm not striving to like prove myself for lack of better words. I'm not using my thinness as like a defense mechanism. That's kind of how I felt at that time. So it was this fake woke mindset where it's like, oh, I have transcended the beauty standards. You know, it was kind of more so like that mindset. Like a good girl syndrome. And so I felt like because nobody could see me anyway, and because I didn't know anybody in this new city, I didn't really have anyone to impress. And because I was more male centered at the time, there was this mindset of, I'm not dating anyone. I'm already with this guy anyway. So it's not as big of a deal. It wasn't my priority. So I never planned on becoming a beluga, but I also never planned on having a snatched body. I just didn't have the same mindset that I have now. So, number one, I was understimulated. Number two, my relationship at the time was dusty. Like, I didn't do anything, I didn't really go anywhere. And I don't really think that it was purposely dusty. I wasn't the type back then to really like examine or analyze my relationships. I wasn't the type to really analyze my lifestyle. I just kind of let things happen to me. I had less initiative during that time. But looking back, I feel like that contributed to me being a beluga. I feel like a lot of women, they become belugas because it's like, where are you going? Do you have any vacations coming up? Do you have are you doing a speaking engagement? Do you have a work presentation? Do you have interviews coming up? Are you posting something? Are you building a website and you need to do a photo shoot for your website? Are you starting a business and you need to be visible for your business? Who are you networking with? I didn't have any of that shit. I had absolutely nothing going on. I was kind of in this transitional period where I was trying to decide at the time, like, okay, do I want to work a 9 to 5? Do I want to be an entrepreneur? What field do I want to work in? So I felt like my mind was preoccupied with other stuff. I was thinking more so about, like, I guess my job, my career path, where that was going. I just had other stuff on my mind. And so the weight loss thing or having a perfect body, it just got kind of pushed to the back. It got pushed off to the side. That's why I say that you can't do everything all at once. So a lot of people are disadvantaged. So like in my case, I was technically disadvantaged when it came to weight loss in that era of my life because I had too much other unfinished business, I guess. I had too much other stuff that was more important to me, such as money. So I remember sometimes just like doing these longer work days, maybe doing like these random temp jobs and stuff, trying to figure out like, okay, what do I want to do? And so because I was just focused on making money and building a life or building stability in this new city, because I was focused on maintaining this little luxury apartment I had, like I was focused on that. I also remember like having a fixation on decorating at the time because I was like, oh, I live in this city now. So the old me who lived in my small hometown, that wasn't a big deal. Now, because I live in my dream city, now I want to focus on decorating this apartment. So I remember I wanted my whole apartment to be purple and blue because I had graduated from everything being pink. So, now I'm purple and blue. Now I'm the mature Exoticals United. So I remember just being obsessed at the time with like going to these different home goods types of stores and trying to find like purple and blue items. I remember getting the towels and like, I don't know, I just feel like my priorities were just so different and kind of dusty looking back. Like, if I were to compare that apartment to this apartment, first of all, I failed because the whole entire apartment really never got fully decorated how I wanted. But for whatever reason, I was just more so fixated on the fact that I live in this new city. This is my beautiful apartment. This apartment represents success. So my definition of success at the time was different versus now. Now I feel like, no, my physical appearance represents success. Forget the material shit. Forget all of that. My physical appearance, my body's health and wellness, and my mental and emotional health, that is my definition of success now. But back then, I feel like I still did have a little bit more of a materialistic type of definition of success. So I think that's part of why I just had this fixation on my apartment being purple and blue and having flowers and little paintings. I remember going and buying all these different little paintings to go on the walls and stuff, and then like having a candle fixation. So I was always getting candles, anything but losing weight, anything but weight loss. That was my focus at the time. Anything but weight loss. I was buying placemats and shit because I wanted like kind of a rustic type of aesthetic. Kind of like cottage core or like the tweed, or I don't even know what that material. It's like where you make placemats, but they're made of like hay. It almost looks like hay or like basket weaving, that sort of material. So I remember trying to incorporate these little basket weaving materials and then like putting that with purple and blue flowers everywhere and like randomly trying to decorate my apartment. And looking back, it's like, bitch, nobody's coming over. Nobody's coming to this apartment. You're not about to have a party. You have no friends here. So, like, why are you so obsessed with decorating? You need to be worried about that cake that you just ate. You need to be worried about getting your 10K steps in. But the only steps I would get in is if I'm walking at fucking TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Marshalls. What's the other one? Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Joann's. Those were pretty much the only steps I would get in. And I also feel like that was kind of my dopamine hit, was decorating my apartment because my body, I was getting pleasure from looking at my decorated apartment rather than right now. I get a dopamine hit from literally looking at myself in the mirror, literally looking at my own body, seeing the curve of my hips, seeing how skinny I am. That gives me like the pleasure now versus before. It's like, oh, I'm looking at these purple towels hanging up in my bathroom, and like that puts me in a good mood. So again, I think it's part of that external locus of control. There's always something outside of me that I have to use to give me a sense of like pleasure or being happy or whatever instead of focusing on myself. So I kind of feel like at the time, all of that was more so a distraction instead of focusing on myself, because I think at the time I was still figuring out who I was as a person, like still figuring out what my passions were. Because I think another thing too is for those of you who come from small towns, or maybe you come from like 9 to 5 culture, kind of like how I did, or I don't know, everybody around you, they've always known you to be one way. I think sometimes that can set you up for a mental disadvantage because you kind of have a hard time believing in yourself. So even though I was outside of my environment, I had left my hometown, I was not around those fake friends anymore and stuff, but I still felt their voices kind of echoing in my head. So it's almost like I still had the emotional residue of these haters, quote unquote, or kind of small minded people. I had the emotional residue of those people still in my head, and I didn't really know how to fix it at the time. Because again, I had more so of like this good girl syndrome. Also, I was just coming out of being hyper spiritual, or kind of like, I guess you could say like religious. And I think the downside of hyper spirituality is de-emphasizing your physical body, de-emphasizing physical health. And it depends on what group you're a part of. It depends on what religion you're a part of or how deep you are into it. But yeah, I think that was part of my story as well. So, number 2, part of what caused me to be a beluga is being broke. Okay, so my definition of broke is obviously going to be different than others, but it's like, even though I lived in this beautiful apartment, even though I lived in my dream city, that was it. That's it. That's all I could do. So I did not travel. I remember I only went on one cruise. I don't remember traveling anywhere else. So that's all I did was go on a cruise. And again, I didn't have social media. So I didn't know that part of vacations is like you dress up and you look cute and you take pictures and stuff. I didn't really have that mindset. So it's like, okay, I went through all this, I did all these sacrifices so I can move to my dream city. But then when I got to the dream city, it was more so like, okay, I'm good. Like I made it. And I didn't have as much of a plan on what type of lifestyle I wanted to live. So I was still kind of figuring it out. But that's a part of being understimulated. It is this mindset of, okay, I'm just going to go to work, come home. I'm just going to figure out how to make all this money so I could be able to pay for my apartment and pay for groceries or whatever. And then that's it. I didn't have a lot of exciting events. There was no reason for me to wear like high heels and stuff. As a matter of fact, I don't remember if I even had any high heels. Like I just don't remember wearing any high heels for sure, because I remember I lived up, I don't know what floor I was on, but I just remember I would take the stairs all the time. So if I was wearing high heels, I wouldn't have taken those stairs. So that's what's making me think I must not have had a lot of high heels, or I just didn't have a reason to get really dressed up and to look super cute. Also, I feel like I made the same mistake that a lot of belugas make, which is having no hobbies outside of the house, having little to no friends outside of your relationship. So it's kind of like being consumed by your relationship or only thinking about that guy or whatever. Have you ever done that before where when you were younger, maybe you had a boyfriend and then like you stopped hanging out with your friends as much? So I feel like I was going more through that at the time. That's a downside of being male centered. That's literally one of the downsides. So, if you are a beluga watching this, my question is what hobbies do you have outside of the house? And I'm not just talking about going grocery shopping or like doing stuff that you have to do to survive. Going to the gas station and getting groceries, that doesn't count. Getting a car wash doesn't count. What hobbies or passions or exploration are you doing outside of the kitchen? Because that's part of what made me into a beluga was I was not really exploring as much. I wasn't in a lot of inspiring environments. My apartment was my inspiring environment, and that's not a bad thing. It's fine if you love where you live, but it makes the experience better when you get to actually experience where you live and you go outside. And I think that some belugas make the excuse that, oh, I don't really like this town. Oh, I'm not planning on staying here long term. I prefer to move to, some other neighborhood. And it's like, okay, then go explore that neighborhood then. You don't have to sit in the house and just watch a bunch of YouTube videos about that neighborhood. How about you get up and actually go outside or walk there or I don't know, take the bus, take your bike over there. Go longboarding and then go down to that neighborhood that you want to hang out in. But I remember in my case, part of what made me into a beluga was not really going out much, not traveling very much. I went on the cruise and then I remember that even on the cruise, I was a beluga as well because on the cruise, the most exciting thing about that was the food, of course. That was the most exciting thing was trying all these new foods. And at that time, I wasn't as self-aware. I didn't really know myself yet. So I think that's important too, is to know who you are. So you can take a personality test to like start off figuring out who you are. That's a good way to kind of start off, or at least that's something that has always helped me is taking different personality tests and stuff. Because I just feel like a personality test is unbiased. Religions are biased. Your family members are biased. Your friends are biased. They only know a piece of you. And so they're going to have stereotypes of you that may not always be accurate. Also, you can change. Human beings can change over time. So that's why I talk so much about like, picking a personality test that works for you. And then you can start to analyze, okay, like for example, I'm an ENTJ. What are the flaws of ENTJ? And then, working from there instead of just asking friends or family or people in my hometown, hey, what do you think about me? Because it's like, okay, if your friends and family really love you, they're probably not memorizing your flaws. They're probably not going to tell you your flaws like, oh, hey, you're actually very lazy and actually you're a beluga. They're not going to tell you that. So it's important to use whatever tools you have. Like ChatGPT wasn't a thing back then, but I like to use ChatGPT to also analyze like, okay, what are some areas where I need to work on improving? What are kind of like my blind spots? I think that is helpful. And a lot of times, people who are belugas, they're blind to their own flaws, or they just don't know how to fix whatever the flaw is with like the overeating. They don't know what's triggering the overeating. And like in my case, what was triggering it was being understimulated, not really having a plan, or only planning out things to a certain point. Like, think about it. I planned a move across the entire country. I was able to sell whatever I needed to sell, so that takes a lot of like organizational skills already. So it's almost like my mental resources had already been used up. My mental resources were exhausted, for lack of better words. And so I didn't really have a desire to then go out twice a week or, to join clubs, joining all these book clubs or going to the library and all that. I didn't really have that desire. I was kind of like, no, I just want to rest now. And most people view me as being a very productive, very disciplined person. And I agree, but I also think that nobody is perfectly disciplined. Nobody is perfectly productive. That's not really a thing. So even though everybody around me perceived me as being super disciplined, there were still certain areas where I was lazy. So, two things can be true at the same time. Maybe you're disciplined when it comes to finances, but then you're lazy when it comes to working out. You're lazy when it comes to cooking. Okay, so number 4, chasing dopamine. Spent $500 basically on snacks, bought a gallon of gummy bears, a gallon of gummy worms, and binged snacks from Walmart. First of all, why the fuck was I shopping at Walmart? I have such a different mindset now versus back then. Walmart, first of all, if you were to go to Walmart today, half of the aisle is probably going to be locked up. Half of the aisle is behind bars at Walmart at this point. So I think that was my only form of stimulation back then, though, because there was a Walmart that was like not that far. So I would go to the Walmart, spend all my money on snacks, and I made this excuse where I was like, oh, it's hot outside. I told you guys the summertime was actually my beluga season. For most people, they gain weight during the winter. No, for me, it was the summertime because I would always have my milkshakes every day. I would have ice cream damn near every day, slushies, frappuccinos. And then another excuse I made was, oh, it's hot outside. I don't want to slave over the hot stove. It's already hot. And that was an excuse because, first of all, I had air conditioning. So it's not like I was just sitting around and I was just sweating and oh my God, it was so dramatic. No, that was just an excuse. Oh, it's hot outside, so I just don't want to cook. That makes no logical sense. If you have air conditioning, you shouldn't be overheating in front of the hot stove. Also, salads exist, chicken wraps, sandwiches. There were so many other options I could have had for dinner, but nope. I decided, oh, I'm just going to eat Cheez-Its and gummy bears, and I'm just going to eat some cupcakes. That's going to be my dinner because I don't want to slave over the stove. Number 5 is being male-centered and being in a relationship. So I have noticed a pattern where whenever I'm single, in general, whenever I'm single, I'm just the most focused. I'm able to spend the most time like thinking about myself. And when I'm in a relationship, my thoughts become occupied with, oh, let's spend time together. And I get it. You're enjoying the relationship. It's fun. I understand. But part of what caused me to be a beluga as well was being settled in my relationship or kind of like just only thinking about me and him together. So it's like if he didn't really want to work out, if he didn't want to walk somewhere, or if he didn't want to hike or whatever, then I didn't want to. So kind of basing my fitness off of my partner's fitness. So do you see how that ties back to that external locus of control? Because looking back, since I was male-centered at the time, if my ex would have been like, oh, I'm going to go run 5 miles or I'm going to go hike up this mountain or something, I would have gone with him. But because he didn't do that, I was just kind of following him at the time. So I was like, oh, okay, he wants to chill at home and eat ice cream. So yeah, let's just chill at home and eat ice cream. So I think that relationships can be kind of like a distraction, or it can just kind of slow you down in general. And I'm not trying to blame the relationships because it's like, another person is not responsible for my health. But you know what? I'm also not responsible for a man's health either. So I think that's part of why a lot of married couples become belugas, because it's like usually one of the people wants to eat a bunch of bullshit and then the other person in the relationship just follows along. I have never heard of a fit person getting in a relationship with an obese person and then suddenly the obese person becomes super fit. Usually it's the exact opposite. The fit person starts to get a little bit chunky in the relationship because their partner is chunky. They naturally kind of like do stuff together. Maybe they're going out to eat together. That was one of the main hobbies actually that I would do with my ex at the time. I mean, that was kind of the event, was going out to eat at a restaurant. And unfortunately, I lived in a place that had very good food. Oh my God, their food was so good. When I got there, I instantly gained weight. That's how good their food was. So I was just like, I was not used to eating foods that were so rich. And also, coming from a small town, I wasn't used to having such a variety of foods either. Like having a variety of restaurants. My number one weakness was Sonic because they didn't have Sonic in my hometown. There was no Sonic. I didn't grow up having Sonic, like the drive-through or whatever. That was not a thing in my city. You had to drive several hours across the state to get Sonic. Like I remember when I would go to my cousin's house and she lived a couple hours away, all the way across the state. she had a Sonic near her house, and I just remember being so excited, like, oh my gosh, I get to go to Sonic. So for whatever reason, I put Sonic on a pedestal since I was a child. And so moving to this new city, they had a Sonic there. They actually had several Sonic. Now my hometown actually does have Sonic, but they had Sonic, so I would go there all the time. I would be so excited. I would be looking at all the different stuff, like, oh, what is this ocean water? And like, what is all this? Oh my God, they have onion rings. I remember getting so excited about fucking onion ring. The most exciting fast food place in my hometown was Wendy's. So it wasn't McDonald's. I mean, everybody likes McDonald's or whatever, but like Wendy's was the more exciting one because it's like, okay, McDonald's is basic. Everybody has McDonald's. But Wendy's, there are not as many Wendy's. So for whatever reason, when I was in high school, that is where I was excited to go, was like driving to Wendy's or something. Or Dairy Queen was another one that was kind of rare. So I remember being excited about that. But yeah, there were not as many fast food places in my particular neighborhood. So I just remember when I moved to this new city, the fact that they had Sonic and they had so many fast food places. But, now that I've lived in large cities for like over a decade now I realize that, that's just a part of being in a big city. Of course they're going to have drive-throughs. They have a lot of cars. They're going to make more money off of their fast food places. So I remember that was one of the main things I was excited about though. I was like, they have so many fast food places here that I've never even heard of. And so I was over here basically doing a food tour on a daily basis and then making the excuse that, oh, well, it's cheap. It's only $5 or, they got the 4 for $4 and they've got all this random stuff. So it's not that expensive anyway. It's only about $30. It's only about $15 for me to have an entire meal. That's cheap. And I also remember I had so much bullshit to the point where I actually had stomach problems when I first moved to that city. And that was when I found out that my stomach, it doesn't react very well to very rich dairy. So I don't know if I was just eating more dairy in that city because I was having a lot of ice cream because I moved around. I think it was like spring or maybe summertime. So it was hotter than normal. And I just remember I would go to all the different fast food places. I would try all their different milkshakes. I mean, that's pretty much what I would get every single time. I had to have whatever the milkshake was, anything with ice cream in it. And another thing about that city too was they had more breakfast places. They had more like diners and stuff. I grew up around IHOP and Denny's. That's it. I don't remember any other places in my hometown where it's like it's known for like having good breakfast. But in this city, I mean, I'd be driving down the street and then there would be like a sign that says like come here, they have all you can eat breakfast. And like I don't know, they just had so much random breakfast stuff as well. So I remember going to a lot of different almost like fast food types of diners or just like breakfast places where you can get a couple of pancakes and all the butter. Oh my God, the butter was so good. I really feel like the butter is actually what messed up my stomach. I don't know what kind of butter they use in those restaurants, but it's not normal butter. It's not the type of butter that I grew up eating because it was so rich. It tasted so much better. Their stuff is like creamy. I don't know how to explain it, but a lot of the foods that I was eating, they were very creamy, very rich. So it would give me that dopamine hit. Processed food, that's what it's created to do. It's created to make you addicted to it. It's created so that you can keep coming back because, you're going to have your taste buds getting excited. And some people say that when you eat sugars and stuff, that the same area of your brain lights up as when you're doing like drugs. So that's something to keep in mind. I didn't know that at the time, but I loved trying all the different breakfast places. Anywhere that had pancakes or waffles, I would go. Something else that caused me to have a beluga mindset too was being in survival mode. So living in that city, I lived there for like a few years and I was not always like in this party mode trying to, eat different foods and stuff. Sometimes I was in work mode when I was living in that city. So, working these long shifts and stuff and then kind of thinking about money. And I had this mindset of once I get a lot of money, then everything else will fall into place. And that's a very vague, I had a problem with setting very vague goals. I wasn't very good back then at setting daily goals. So now I have a task list every single day. I have my own to-do list every day. But back then I didn't really have that. So I had very vague goals like, oh, once I get money, then everything's going to happen for me. Once I get rich, then I'll have more money to like pay somebody to be a maid or pay somebody to cook for me. And, then all my problems will be solved. So I had this fantasy thinking. One day, far in the future, everything will be perfect and then I'll be able to be healthy. Something else too was being more isolated. So because I didn't know anyone there and I had no social media and stuff, I had no one to flex on. I had no one to prove myself to. I had no one to get revenge on. So again, that was more of that external locus of control back then. It was this thing where it's like I'm not being seen anyway. I'm not on a stage. I'm not like a leader of anything. If you guys knew my background, you would understand what I'm talking about. But like some of you guys do know what I'm talking about, where you have a history of being an overachiever. That was me. I was always on somebody's stage. I was always on somebody's platform. I was always on somebody's committee. I was always some sort of leader or kind of chosen out of the crowd or whatever. So I was always elevated, I guess. So to go from that to finally feeling like I have freedom, finally I can be invisible. Finally, I can just not have any obligations. It was that mindset where it's like, I don't have a reason to really be healthy. I don't have a reason to really look good. And then I feel like that mindset spilled over into fitness to where I just didn't care anymore. And it wasn't until one day when I went to church. So they had this mega church in my area. And so I decided to go to the church because I was like, oh, I should probably start socializing and making friends, whatever. So I went to the mega church, and that was my wake up call because I was so used to people always staring at me in jealousy. In college, in high school, at church, walking down the street, walking in the mall. I was so used to that. But when I went to this mega church, I was so leveled down that I remember instead of people staring at my entire face and body and hair and everything, they didn't do that anymore. They only looked at my hair. Like I only got jealousy stares about my hair. I didn't get jealousy stares about my body and everything else. And so that was how I knew that I leveled down. And yeah, that sounds fucked up, but that's how I thought at the time. That's what I was thinking. And I remember being in the bathroom, like standing in line at the bathroom, and none of the other girls, they weren't looking at my body or just like doing that up and down thing. You know how girls do that to you where they look at you, they give you like a stank face and they look up and down. They didn't give me the stank up and down. They only gave me the stank face towards my face and hair. And so that's how I knew, okay, my body is fucked. Like my my body, I'm bad built. That's how I knew. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm starting to get bad built. Another way that I knew that I got too fat was because I was relying on maxi dresses. So I was already quote unquote modest or whatever, but I just remember one day trying to put on my sundress and that shit would not go up past my knees. That's how fat I became, basically. And I will be honest, I've never been obese, but I've always been very, very skinny, like size small, size extra, extra small. So to go from extra, extra small to suddenly being large, that's a big transition. I know that some people think, oh, that's not a big deal. You're still normal. But it's like I wasn't used to being normal. I was used to being elite in terms of my body and my athleticism and just how I looked in general. I was used to always being aspirational. So that was part of my wake up call. It was, not having people kind of comparing themselves to me, not being a source of comparison. And again, that was an unhealthy way to think back then. But I still had that external locus of control. So, number 6, another thing that made me understimulated was not researching free things to do in my city. So at the time, I was very dusty. I remember at one point I had no car. I don't remember what happened or why I had no car, but I remember I was trying to save like $1,500 so I could get like one of those beater cars from OfferUp. But I would make that excuse of, well, I don't have any money. I have to save up for a car, so I can't go anywhere. And by the way, I don't like to ask my parents for money. I don't really do that. That's very disrespectful, in my opinion. Why would I ask my parents for money? My parents have sacrificed pretty much their whole lives so I could have the opportunities that I have. So I was never the type that would then go and ask my parents for money. They already have given me enough money. They paid for my college, they paid for so much stuff in my life. So I always viewed it as disrespectful. My parents don't view it that way. Like, they would definitely help me if I needed it, but I've never been the type to try to take for granted my parents' generosity. My parents are aging and stuff, so I would never want to just like call them up and be like, "Hey mom, hey dad, can I have some money so I can like go to the movies and like go out and, just have spending money?" I don't like doing that. That's not how I was raised. So I would just save up my money. If I didn't have any money, I would just let myself suffer, basically. I would be like, this is my fault. It's my responsibility. I need to take accountability for the fact that I have no money. So if I have no money, I can't go anywhere. I can't go to the movies. I can't do the stuff. But I feel like I messed up back then because I wasn't looking up free things to do. So, living in a major city, they have tons of free things to do. You can go to the tourist areas. I didn't know it at the time, but they had a shuttle. They had a whole free shuttle going to and from my apartment building. It would go all over the little town because apparently there was a university that was not far, so I guess some people who lived at my apartments were like in the university. So they had a whole shuttle that was going to and from there, and I didn't know that yet. But I would make the excuse of, okay, I have no money, so I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. All I can do is just stay in the house and eat. So that's what I would do. I would do this big back behavior. Sometimes I would go to a place like Costco or Sam's Club and then do their samples, eat up their samples and shit. Or I would go to Sam's Club and get the pizza. You know how they have that like at Costco and places like that where you can get a slice of pizza for like a couple dollars. So I would go there and get the pizza, and that was my stimulation. It always had to do with food. But then another wake up call was I went to the CVS and they had one of those machines. They had a machine where it's like it could weigh you and then it also would take your blood pressure. You know that arm thing? Like you slip your arm through the hole and then it like blows up and squeezes your arm and then it tells you your blood pressure. So I went on this little machine and the machine would tell you like if you're obese or not. And on my machine, when I weighed myself, by the way, my ex was there with me. Like me and him were just being, we were like being silly or whatever, just like, oh, look, there's a machine. So we were supposed to be having fun. So I got on the machine and then it took my weight. And I remember it said on the scale, it said, you are a little overweight. Like that's literally, they literally had like a little scale with a pointing arrow that tells you like if you're at a healthy weight, then it would point to like you're healthy or it would point to like you're underweight. And on mine, it said you're a little overweight. And I remember being so embarrassed because my ex was literally right there. Like he could see the machine, like he could see the proof now that I was like overweight. And obviously he saw me every day. So it wasn't like he didn't know or whatever. But still, I remember being embarrassed. And then I took the blood pressure thing, like I did the arm thing, and my blood pressure was high. And it literally said, you were a little bit high on the blood pressure. And I remember messaging my mom. I was like, oh, should I be concerned? Should I go to like some urgent care or something? Because it said my blood pressure was high, but I feel normal. Like I don't feel sick or anything. And then I remember people were asking me questions like, oh, were you laughing or something? Or were you like running or something? Because sometimes the machines are like messed up, or maybe you were laughing while you did it. So it turns out I was fine, but still, that was a wake up call because I was like, oh my God, I'm worse off than what I thought. Like I really just let myself go, basically. But I remember another wake up call was I got a free cake. I don't remember why I got a free cake. I think there was like a cookout or something. And you know how they say, oh, do you guys want to take home a plate? Or, we don't want these pizzas. Do you want to take these home? So I took home this giant cake. And I remember I didn't eat the whole cake in one day, but I ate the majority of it. I ate like probably at least 60%. And this is a Costco sized cake. So think of like a birthday cake for like 20 people. That's how big this cake was. And it had like all this vanilla frosting on it. It had the little swirls on it and like writing and balloons and stuff on it. So I remember it was a beautiful sunny day. And instead of going outside and actually doing something with myself, I decided to stay inside and waste this beautiful day sitting at home eating cake. And then I remember feeling kind of sick, like my stomach felt upset because, my stomach is like, why are you eating this? And I just remember looking in the mirror and I basically had the bowling ball stomach, like I had the food baby. And then that was when I was like, okay, I need to do something with my life. Like, this is just ridiculous. I'm literally eating so much sugar to the point where my stomach is hurting. And then I look in the mirror and now my stomach is like poking out. There's like a circle right there. And then I remember thinking when I looked in the mirror, I was like, you know what? Maybe it's just the outfit I'm wearing and it's just emphasizing my stomach and it's kind of emphasizing my hips. So I specifically remember I went into the closet and I put on a nightgown because I was like, a nightgown that's going to be baggy and loose. That shit was not baggy and loose. My nightgown, I looked like I was going to the club. That's how I looked in my nightgown. You know those silky nightgowns where it's like it has a cute little halter top or like, something cute at the top and then at the bottom is kind of loose fitting or it's supposed to be. I looked in the mirror, I was like, okay, no, I actually am a beluga because this nightgown has always been like bigger on me. It's always been like kind of baggy. Okay, I just had to pause it to get some water, but I feel like my excitement came from food because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I didn't have anything to do. I didn't go out of my way to plan things for myself. And by the way, I think this has been one of my advantages with decentering men is instead of waiting for a man to take me on a date, I plan my own solo outings now. I plan my own activities for myself instead of depending on someone else to plan that. Um so, one of the things that caused me to stay a beluga was not having any stimulating environments. The most exciting environment was the kitchen or a restaurant. And you know how I talk about having multiple sources of validation, like multiple sources of micro validation? I feel like you have to also have multiple sources of excitement in order to stay skinny. You have to. You have to have multiple sources of excitement other than food and restaurants. Because looking back, I lived in a beautiful apartment. I could have gone to the business center. They had such a gorgeous business center. They had like all these computers. It was this big, beautiful room with like nice windows and everything. They had tables in there. You could have ate your lunch in there. They had printers and stuff in there. So, for whatever reason, I just was too embarrassed to go to the business center. I don't know why I felt dusty. Well, actually, I do know why. It's because I didn't have any Wi Fi yet. I didn't have any Wi Fi yet in my apartment, and I didn't have a laptop yet. I didn't have a working laptop at the time. So I felt dusty, like going to the business center or getting on their computers, or I don't know. I just felt like that's bum behavior. Like, why would I go in there? But that was stupid. That was a limited mindset. I'm paying for that. Like, when you live in an apartment and they have a business center and they have like the game room and all that, you're paying for that. So, no, it's not dusty to go to the game room. Going to the game room and playing pool, that's better than just sitting around eating like a beluga. Going to the computers in the business center and printing out resumes or applying for jobs or whatever, that's better than sitting in your kitchen and just eating a bunch of cake. So, I think another thing was I didn't plan any stimulating activities and I felt too dusty doing free activities like going to the park, going to the business center. And looking back, my most exciting times actually was, one of them was when I was in the business center. Because I remember I would set up some of my production equipment in there sometimes. I would like play around with my different cameras and all of that. I don't know. I just had so much fun looking back whenever I did go in the business center. And I remember getting on the computer. I met some of my neighbors. So I lived in a predominantly Indian area. I don't know why they were all Indian. I guess there's a high Indian population in that city, which I didn't know. But I would always meet somebody in there. And honestly, the Indian people that I was around, they were so kind and so much fun. And I remember every night at my apartment, so they had this beautiful pool area in my apartment. It was a huge pool apartment. And every night, the kids, the college kids who happen to be Indian, they would have like pool parties like after the pool was closed. And they didn't put any they didn't have music playing. They weren't loud or anything. But I just remember one time I was walking out there late at night and I saw all of these people, literally probably at least 50 to 100 people, just sitting around the pools, just talking quietly, just having fun. It just looked like a party. It almost reminded me of how a cafe would look. It just looked like that. There were people just sitting there. There were people talking. There were people at the pool playing cards. And I just remember thinking, wow, they are so grateful to just be here, and they're just living their lives. They're not spending money. They're just doing stuff for free, just talking with their friends and relaxing and just being outside at night instead of feeling like, oh, I have no money, so I'm just going to stay home and eat. Basically, I used money as the excuse for everything. Oh, I have no money to like get a bunch of groceries, so now I have to like spend money at the fast food place, which is some bullshit. You could get groceries for $15. But I just remember money was always the excuse that I would use to be a beluga. Oh, I don't have money, or I don't have time, or I don't feel like planning activities. Meanwhile, my own neighbors planned free activities and they were just hanging out by the pool. They would go out there, or they would cook their food out on the little grills out there. And so then part of what helped me to stop being so much of a beluga was I started waking up in the morning and going to one of the pools because they had multiple pools. I think they had maybe two or three different pools because it was a huge gated area with like all these different apartment buildings, but they were all within the same company. So I remember I was like, I'm going to start going to the pool. So I did. I started waking up in the morning, going to the pool, doing squats and stuff in the pool because I was too weak and I was also too embarrassed to go to the gym at the time. I had a lot of like, I guess you could say insecurities or like anxiety. I don't know why. I cared too much about what people think of me at the time. Because I remember I didn't want to be in the business center because, oh, that looks dusty. I don't want to be in the gym because, oh, I'm not very in shape. I'm going to get too sweaty. That's embarrassing. So I was waking up early in the morning to go to the pool just by myself. And I would do little exercises in the pool, like doing squats in the pool. To this day, I still like to get my 10K steps in the pool sometimes because it's just fun, or I just swim. I just notice whenever I'm in the pool, I don't notice how much I'm working my muscles until after I get out of the pool. Then I'm like sore and I'm like, oh wow, that was a good workout. So part of what makes people belugas is not having sources of excitement. And every source of excitement, it doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be dramatic. Because I actually did have fun at the business center. I did have fun at the pool. I did have fun whenever I went into the gym because, again, they had two different rooms. They had like a cardio room. Then they had another room where it's like you could watch Pilates and stuff on the little screen. You could do like yoga in there. So I always had fun when I would do like the apartment amenities. But I just had this dusty mindset that like, oh, using apartment amenities, that's dusty. You have to go out and like do something epic or like, spend money somehow. But going to the business center, that's still better than eating. So, something that helped me was figuring out that I need multiple sources of excitement. I need multiple sources of stimulation, not just a relationship or, I don't know, food. I need to have other stuff happening in my life or, have other fun activities. So, now I actually go out of my way. Like in my current building that I live in, oh, I'm going out of my way to use all these amenities because again you're paying for it, so it's like why would I pay for these amenities and then I never use them? So that's why I say, what are your hobbies outside of the house? So even if it's something as simple as you go to the business center for 1 hour a day to do your work, or you're going, I mean, I prefer for you to really get out of your building, but right now if you're just super poor and you don't have, maybe there's nothing free around your area, you could at least use the amenities in your building. Is there a park that you could go to and do some yoga or like read a book? Because that's another thing too, is fear of being alone. Some people are afraid to be seen out in public alone. They're afraid to be seen out walking by themselves, or they feel like everybody is staring at them driving by in their cars, which they are. Because, that used to happen to me too, where I'd be walking down the street and then, cars would slow down. They would try to catcall or whatever. It was always a group of Mexicans that would be the ones doing the catcalling, slowing down in their pickup truck, driving 2 miles per hour so they could try to talk to me or whatever. So I think the fear of being seen is a part of it, or kind of like this pretty girl PTSD where you're hyper visible. But you can find a park or a trail that's a little bit more secluded. That's what I did, was I started finding actual hiking trails where they had like trees and stuff to kind of cover you so you're not driving past, like there aren't cars driving past you. And that was a way to get stimulation without having to spend a lot of money. And then I found out about the shuttle. I found out that they had the shuttle going from my apartment. So then during the time when I didn't have a car, it was not a big deal because I could just take that shuttle. And that was like my adventure, taking the shuttle and then like going through all the stops. Sometimes I would just sit on the shuttle and just, I wanted to see like, where does this shuttle stop? Like, where are all of the stops? And then I would get out at random places. Usually it was at some sort of plaza or like a strip mall type of place where they would stop. And then I would just walk around sometimes or just kind of window shop and explore and just not buy anything. But for those of you who are watching this, what are your sources of excitement outside of a man and food? And also outside of spending money? Because those tend to be the top three coping mechanisms that people have in America. It's spending money on stuff they don't need and then going broke. It's being with a man who mistreats them, or it's eating food. So, what are your sources of excitement besides that? So, for example, I can use some of my stuff as an example. Going to the park, doing yoga by myself at the park, making friends is something that's always a source of excitement for me. Like making a new friend, talking to somebody in my building, or I don't know, just like hanging out with people. For some of you guys, maybe you have a certain passion. Do you like photography? Maybe you can go out and shoot some photos of like some birds or something. You know how some people like bird watching, or they just like to go to the ocean, they like to take pictures of boats and stuff. That's an example of bringing yourself excitement without needing food. Another thing that I'll do, this is when I'm at home though. So if you're already a homebody, don't do this. But in my case, sometimes I'll just go through my closet or I'll go through my cabinets and then I'll just start using all these new beauty products that I never used. Because most people are over consumers, by the way. So you probably have hella shit in your closet or a bunch of stuff. You have an entire store in your apartment right now. So no, you don't need to go to TJ Maxx. You already have the entire TJ Maxx in your home. So that could also be a source of novelty or, something to do besides eating. I have so many bath bombs. I was actually looking at my pantry today or my hall closet. I was like, oh my God, I have so many bath bombs that I didn't use because that used to be one of my weaknesses was like, especially if I went into Whole Foods or Lush, I would always have to get like a bath bomb. So now I just have a whole bunch of bath bombs just sitting in my cabinet. But it's like, okay, maybe you could do that instead of eating food. You can like make yourself a fancy bath, make yourself a fancy detox bath, and then you can watch something. But I mean, I couldn't do that because again, I had like no Wi-Fi. Well, I still had data, but I think my data had limits. Like I could only use a certain amount of data. um, but that's something to think about though. Like, what hobbies can you do other than just eating? And think about the happiest time in your life. Think about the skinniest time in your life. What were you doing? Because in my case, well, one of my skinniest times is right now, honestly. I mean, I've been skinny for a long time, but I feel like some of the things I do, I go to classes at the gym, I go to free classes in the park. I've never heard of a park that has no activities whatsoever. I've never heard of that. Most parks, even if you're in a small town, that park is going to have something going on at least once a year. They might have a little concert there. They might have a little walking group there. Maybe they have a little free yoga class, Tai Chi, whatever. So that's always an option. I do stuff like that. Just walking to the park or just going on a walk around the city and kind of exploring and just seeing what's in my neighborhood. Like I told you guys one time, I was walking around one of my old neighborhoods and they had a vitamin shop there, like the GNC, the people that sell like the protein shakes and stuff. And I just went in there. I didn't have any money, but I was able to get so many free samples from the guy that worked at the front just because I walked into the store. So that's another thing too, just walking around, exploring, asking people questions, figuring out if they have a shuttle service. Do you live near a university? Because if so, you could look into if they have a shuttle service or you could just walk on to the university campus. Most campuses are open. And so they're not always going to check to see if you have a student ID because when I look back at that time in my life when I was a beluga, one of the funnest days that I remember was when I walked to the university. That's all I did. I put on my big ass maxi dress because that's all I could fit. And then I remember I walked, I don't know how many miles it was. It was probably around 2 miles. I walked to the university in my maxi dress, and I just remember as soon as I stepped foot on that university, I felt so refreshed. I literally felt energized. So, for most people, you have certain environments that energize you. For me, it's coffee shops, it's gyms, it's parks, it's mountains, it's universities, some sort of plaza, anywhere where there are tall buildings. The city in general energizes me. Being downtown, being around a bunch of tall buildings, seeing all the bikers um, going past me, and seeing all the people skateboarding and longboarding, and walking down the pier and stuff like that, seeing the ocean and the beach in the background. Those are examples of environments that bring me stimulation, and I'm not thinking about food. But I remember when I walked onto that university campus, it literally felt like a big giant museum because I didn't know that that university existed. I didn't know that I lived so close to it. And I walked through all the buildings. I got to see their cafeteria. I basically just did a self guided tour. I got to see the cafeteria. I walked through all the buildings and I just explored just to see, like, okay, what kind of resources do they have here? And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to start coming here and hanging out and just like bringing my laptop here. I love university culture. I talk a lot about university because I love the culture of leveling up, educating yourself. You're not going to get made fun of for reading books. So I love that about universities. I will always respect that when it comes to like colleges and stuff. So one thing that I still do to this day, every once in a while, I will go and edit my Exoticals United YouTube videos. I'll go to the university. I still do that. The only reason I haven't been in a couple weeks is because I got some parking tickets. I didn't get parking tickets at the university, but like now I'm kind of scared of getting parking tickets because whenever I would go there, I would always park for free, and like I never got a ticket. But I will sometimes just go to the university, and first of all, they have way cheaper coffee as well. That was another reason I liked editing at the university because their cups of coffee were only like $1 because it's for students. So it would only be $1. I would walk onto the university. There are thousands of people just walking around, just thinking about leveling up, just like me. So that's another thing too. What kind of like collective energy are you around? What kind of culture are you around? Are you in a culture of belugas? Because when I'm at the university campuses, I don't see a bunch of obese people walking around. Go to your average campus, whatever city you're in right now, find the nearest college and go walk around there. Go walk around the university. Go walk around and tell me how many obese people you see walking around. Because I guarantee you're not going to see it. You're probably going to see people who are more healthy and fit. You know why? Because they have other shit to think about other than food. They're thinking about graduation. They're thinking about interning. They're thinking about networking. They're reading books. They're on the computer. They're applying to jobs. They're talking to their professors. They're making friends. They're studying abroad. They're planning trips. They're planning their spring break. They're planning what they're doing for summer break. So they're not mentally occupied with food. So that's one of the hacks that I love about university culture. So even though I'm no longer in school or whatever, I'm already done with school, but still, I don't care. And that's another thing too. This stereotype that, oh, you can only be on a university campus if you are a student or if you're like young. That's false. And only people who haven't been to college make talking points like that, because anybody who's been to college knows that you could be any age. You could be old. I mean, there was a lady in one of my classes, she was probably like 70 something. So it's never too late to get your degree. So you're not going to be weird. Nobody's going to look at you crazy. Like, oh my gosh, who's this old person walking around? No. People are probably going to assume you're a student. They're really not even going to say anything to you. They'll probably just mind their business and just keep walking. But that's one of my favorite hacks. And that's one of my favorite like free environments is going to college campuses, going to the library, using their library, just sitting around. I like college campuses because they have plenty of places to sit down. They've got plenty of places where you could have privacy if necessary. So I don't know what you guys are doing for your hobbies, but for those of you who are into photography, maybe you want to take some photos of yourself. Maybe you need to take some LinkedIn photos. Go to the university. Just go out on the grass and take some cute pictures of yourself with the grass background. Or go into the library, go into one of the hallways or something, and just start taking some cute photos of yourself. wear a blazer, wear something cute, take your photos, and then you can put that on your LinkedIn. There are so many other things to do in this world other than just eating and being a beluga. So I learned to use my exploration. I learned to use that with other areas. I will explore my city instead of exploring the pantry. I'm going to get my sense of novelty and excitement from going and hanging out at a new university, bringing my laptop and going and making some phone calls at the university instead of making phone calls at home in my bed with some ice cream next to me. No. How about I get cute and I walk around? Like, think about when you were the skinniest. Think about when you were the happiest. What did you do on a daily basis? And were you in a relationship? Because anytime I've been the most fit, it has been when I was single. And I'm not saying that every relationship I was like fat, but just in general, though, I've always been the most leveled up when I am the most decentered from men and when I'm the most decentered from food. People who are belugas, they center their lives around food. They center their free time around food. So once they get off work, the first thing they're thinking is, what am I going to eat? When they wake up in the morning, they're thinking, what am I going to eat for breakfast? Okay, what am I going to eat for lunch? Okay, what kind of snacks can I get? What fast food places are around here? What restaurants can I drive through? That's what a beluga is thinking about. A beluga's mind is consumed with food. And by the way, I'm not talking about overweight women who are on a weight loss journey. That's not a beluga. A beluga is a woman who has that victim mindset. She doesn't want to change. She doesn't care about her health. And then she wants to shame women for being skinny. That's a beluga mindset. So the way that I got out of the beluga mindset was by having other things to think about. Are you learning any other languages? Because if you only speak one language, that's some dusty ass behavior. Like, there are so many things to do in this world. The world is so big. There are so many activities to do. There are so many hobbies that you could be doing. And you're telling me that the most exciting thing that you have going on in your day is a cupcake. That's actually very sad. And think about it. A lot of belugas, all they do is really just eat food and watch Netflix. Have you ever noticed the beluga keeps up with every single show? And it's like, bitch, with the amount of shows you keep up with, you could have started a YouTube channel. You could have made an entire YouTube channel where you review all the movies that you watched. You could have became a freaking famous movie reviewer. You are a professional movie watcher at this point. You might as well start your career as a film critic at this point. Even that is a better plan than just sitting around eating food. As a matter of fact, at one time I was going to become a Yelp reviewer, which is like where you go to all these different restaurants and then you review their food. I mean, even that, like getting perks or walking to these restaurants or like riding your bike to these restaurants and stuff and then getting some sort of perk, even that is better than just sitting around eating your life away. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.